It's Mean Girls meets Strangers on a Train. Well, loosely. The new teen angst dark comedy Do Revenge is coming to Netflix, so should it be on your watch list? After a clandestine run-in, Drea and Eleanor team up to go after each other's tormentors. Hawke and Camila Mendes star along with Austin Abrams, Talia Ryder, Alisha Boe, and Rish Shah. Now, they're mostly uber-rich teenagers who attend this very elite prep school, and after Drea, played by Mendes, gets humiliated, she teams up with Eleanor, who's played by Hawke, and then she's also been wronged by somebody. Now, they team up to exact revenge, but in order to not get caught, they agree to take care of each other's villains. So I'm finding it very curious that most of the time when we have a scenario like this, the teenagers are always the ultra-rich and attending some elite academy where they have organic gardening classes and lectures on fabric sensitivity. I mean, these kids are in no way relatable, other than the fact that they can be terrible people just like everybody else. And maybe that's the point, to create characters that are just so out there they can't be mistaken for representing real people. And who knows? I just think at some point though, it would be more palpable and effective to have characters that reflect the majority of people's experiences. But I digress. This is a dark comedy that takes just under 2 hours to tell. We get a small amount of setup for why our characters feel wronged and why they'd want to seek out revenge. Now, I think Eleanor's character gets to provide a much richer telling of her hurt, while Drea's is pretty straightforward. And through both experiences, it's fairly easy to see how they've been betrayed and then why they'd want to take down the people responsible. For a dark comedy, I didn't laugh much, and I'm pretty easy to amuse. There are times where I did chuckle, and I think some of the snark and the sarcasm works, but most of the time, the humor's very predictable, and it feels like it's being forced. Now, Drea is a hard character to get behind. She comes across as whiny, entitled, and much of the time just really mean. There are times where we watch her let her guard down, and in those instances, she becomes likable, like we get to see potential goodness in her. But because so much of the character is a facade, it's hard to truly believe anything that we witness. She's feeling sad or maybe remorseful, but is that just an act? Too much of the time it's hard to tell, so it's easier to just go with the belief that she's a very rotten person, really similar to those that she's trying to get revenge on. Now, Eleanor is a little easier to root for, but because she participates in so many of the revenge plots along with Drea, she too is difficult to tell if anything we ever see is genuine, or maybe if she has any goodness within her. Now, I really liked Hawke in Stranger Things. She's got incredible comedic timing and can really deliver with the snark and witty sarcasm. Here, she gets to display a little bit of that, but not enough to make her character one that I can connect with. I think there are really only two characters in this that don't feel vapid and terrible. They're played by Talia Ryder and Rish Shah. Now, these two come across as authentic and kind, not looking to use others as a pawn in any sort of messed up plan. And while we do get some great scenes with them, I wanted more to kind of just cleanse the palate from all of the terribleness from all the other characters. Now, while a ton of the story arc is very predictable, there was a moment that completely subverted my expectations, and I totally appreciate that. I was caught off guard, and in that moment, it made me enjoy what I was watching. But that didn't last too long because the narrative goes right back to its initial trajectory and then doesn't bring anything new or fresh to the story. There are a lot of complications that are created to just help produce more drama within the story. But some of this feels drawn out unnecessarily, which then unfortunately drags out the overall movie. Now, some portions really have a good pace to them, where the storytelling is moving efficiently. And this happens a lot when part of a plan is being executed. We get to see the hijinks in motion, creating excitement and then forward progress. But there are a lot of other times when the characters sit around and brood over what they're going to do next, and that repetitive portion of the narrative, it just becomes tired. Now, thankfully, the movie does utilize time jumps to get us through the school year faster, and it focuses on chunks of time within a season, choosing to highlight a particular instance or an event. Now, for example, there's a ring ceremony that takes place in the spring, and I think that's the only event during that time period. But what unfolds I thought was really humorous, but never laugh out loud funny. And in this instance, I think they missed the boat to just not go all out in the craziness. The situation called for it, and the story could have gotten away with just about anything and it not feel out of place. The same can't be said for any other time within the movie, so I really think that they did miss the opportunity for some laughs. Now, the soundtrack is one of the standout elements in this. It's a mix of 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, combined with current songs, so pretty much anybody that's going to watch this is sure to have at least one song that they can sing along to. Now, from a technical perspective, the majority of this looks great. The production uses a ton of bright and clean colors, making everything have a purity to it that belies the dirtiness of our characters. And while the characters are in school, a lot of pastels are used, again conveying an innocence that is in direct contrast to what we know about the characters. Now, there are a couple of scenes that feature characters in cars, and these unfortunately do look very fake. The lighting and the backgrounds, they just lack realism, but thankfully these situations aren't prevalent, so they can mostly be overlooked. At the end of this, I really want our characters to exhibit growth, to learn from all that they've gone through and then come out better on the other side of their experiences. And I'm kind of torn on whether or not I believe that any growth was actually achieved. I mean, we get to see what could be considered growth, but because we've also spent so much time with these people who are narcissistic liars, it is really difficult to believe what they're exhibiting. I guess what I really want is for Drea and Eleanor to not just gain from being exactly the same as their tormentors, but instead to see how they can rise above. And do they achieve that? I'm not really sure. So overall, Do Revenge is a mildly funny dark comedy that provides characters who are terrible and places them in situations that should have created laughs. The story outstays its welcome by lingering too long in areas of brooding that don't progress the narrative forward, and then also neglects to take advantage of scenarios that can be played for absurdity and ridiculousness. The main characters, portrayed by Camila Mendes and Maya Hawke, unfortunately falter and become the exact thing they're fighting against, making them just as despicable as their enemies. I wanted to like this more, and despite it having some moments that I enjoyed, the majority of this was a chore to get through. There's no sex or nudity, a ton of profanity, and some violence. I give Do Revenge 2 out of 5 couches. What's a dark comedy that you really like? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.